This game sucks, and I'm gonna tell you why. Metroid Other M was not a very good game. Judged on its own merits, it's just another generic action game that does nothing new or interesting, with the only remarkable thing about it being its awfully written story that is bad even when compared to the usual standards of video game writing. The only good thing I can say about it is that it looks good, especially for a Wii game, but other than that, there's nothing really special about this game. Well, other than the fact it destroyed one of gaming's most beloved series and ruined its most respected female icon, perhaps I should start from the beginning. For those who don't know what the Metroid series is, it is one of gaming's oldest and most influential franchises spanning almost 30 years of gaming history. It is responsible for pioneering a genre of games that focus on open-ended exploration that encourage gamers to explore every nook and cranny of the game world and master navigating it. Today, this genre of games is actually called Metroidvania in honor of the Metroid and Castlevania series, and it is a very popular genre among the independent gaming scene and has spawned a lot of interesting and unique games that owe a lot to the legacy of Metroid. But perhaps the thing that Metroid is most well known for is creating gaming's first female protagonist, Samus Aran. Samus stood out amongst other visible female characters in the video game world by not being tied down by the usual feminine tropes. If you were to look at her with her armor on without prior knowledge that she was a woman, one might easily confuse her for yet another space marine. But she wasn't just another space marine, she was a badass bounty hunter that went around the galaxy purging the threat of the bioweapons known as Metroids from the galaxy. She was strong, intelligent, fiercely independent, and just an all-around awesome character. As you've likely already guessed, I'm a huge fan of the Metroid games. I grew up watching lots of sci-fi like The Fifth Element and Star Wars and playing adventure games like Myst and The Legend of Zelda, so Metroid was right up my alley. Shockingly though, I did not start getting into Metroid until I was 16, after my best friend got me Metroid Prime 2 Echoes for the GameCube. I played it, fell in love, and quickly caught up with the rest of the series. I love these games. I love the strange alien worlds you got to explore in them, loved the exploration-focused gameplay that challenged you to master navigating the world, and I love Samus, who was just such a badass and a joy to play as. Everything was wonderful. And then Metroid Other M happened.
The baby, the baby, the baby, the baby, the baby, the baby, baby, the 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 baby,
Oh, how it happened. Metroid Other M is the result of a collaboration between Nintendo and Japanese studio Team Ninja. Team Ninja is rather infamous within the game industry for pioneering the use of jiggle physics. What are jiggle physics? Those are jiggle physics. Because of this reputation, many people blame Team Ninja for ruining Samus, but in actuality, Team Ninja mainly handled the grunt work for the project, programming the game and animating the cutscenes in conjunction with animation studio D-Rockets, though they are likely the ones that snuck in all the male gaze you see in some of the cutscenes. No, the person you should be blaming is Yoshio Sakamoto. Yoshio Sakamoto was the producer, director, and writer of Metroid Other M, and he was also the co-creator for the entire Metroid series. Metroid Other M is basically his magnum opus, and from various interviews he gives the impression that he poured his heart and soul into Other M. He reminds me a lot of George Lucas, actually. Both of them created something that a lot of people ended up loving and forming a really close attachment to, and then made an over-ambitious follow-up years later that answers questions nobody asked and shows just how little they understood the original work that they created. But enough build-up. Let's talk about the actual game. There is so much wrong with this game, I am going to focus solely on 3 primary points. Number 1. Metroid Other M would rather be a movie than a game. A common problem I see in games that want to tell deep, emotional stories is that they cut out a lot of the actual game part in favor of using cinematic cutscenes. Now, I'm not saying anything against cinematics, but video games are not films or TV shows, and they should not rely solely on the methods of other forms of media. Games have a unique strength of being interactive, and I feel it is important for games to try and take advantage of that strength. All the other Metroid games told their stories through environmental storytelling, which is something unique to games, and it used as few cutscenes as possible to ensure the players always felt like they were a part of the world. Metroid Other M, on the other hand, would just like to railroad players through the game as fast as possible to get to the next cinematic cutscene they have no control over. It doesn't value the player's presence in any meaningful way. Hell, when you beat the game, you get the option to experience the whole story as a movie anyway. So that raises the question of why Metroid Other M was even a game in the first place if all that wanted to do was tell a story that the player had absolutely no control over. Your guess is as good as mine, I'm afraid. Number 2, the story is awful regardless. If you're gonna go through the trouble of designing your entire game to railroad players through a predetermined storyline they have absolutely no control over, can you at the very least make sure that story is actually good? I have said previously that Metroid Other M has one of the worst written stories I've ever seen in any video game. And video games are not very competently written a lot of the time.
Oh, Barry!
That was too close. You were almost a Jill sandwich.
You're right.
But video games can make up for being horribly written if they have fun and engaging gameplay. But Metroid Other M stripped its gameplay aspects to their bare necessities to focus on its story and writing exclusively, so it's kind of baffling to see just how utterly atrocious it is. I can usually forgive some bad localization from Japanese to English, but the way Metroid Other M was written can't be fixed no matter what language it is. This is because at least 75% of the script is Samus simply monologuing over what is currently happening right in front of your face. It breaks the rule of show don't tell constantly.
The large cage-like booth looked like something had been raised in it. And in one corner was the miserable form of a researcher's corpse. This victim hadn't sustained the same injuries. The dead I'd seen had been torn apart by something large. This one had been attacked by a different type of creature.
You could cut out all of these monologues, and you would literally lose nothing. People would still be able to understand the story perfectly fine, without all this unnecessary dialogue. But even if they would trim off all that fat, this story would still be awful. And that leads me into my final point. Number 3, the story completely ruined Samus's character. The story of Metroid Other M takes gaming's most respected and beloved female icon, who was well known for her iron will and fierce independence, and turns her into an emotional wreck with gender and daddy issues that would make Sigmund Freud's head explode. I wasn't against trying to bring a little humanity to Samus. After all, she was a fairly mysterious character that a lot of people wanted to know more about. But this is not how we wanted it to happen. We didn't want Samus breaking down against threats she has taken down countless times before. We didn't want to hear her voice her every thought like a whiny teenager writing in her diary. And most of all, we didn't want to see her relationship with this former military commander of hers. Her relationship with this guy. This fucking guy.
Any objections, lady?
The thumbs-up sign had been used by the Galactic Federation for ages. Me? I was known for giving the thumbs down during briefing. I had my reasons, though. Commander Adam Malkovich was normally cool and not one to joke around. But he would end all of his mission briefings by saying, "Any objections, lady?" He was joking, but others weren't. At the time, I felt surrounded by people who treated me like a child, or used kid gloves because I was a woman. And yet with Adam, I was grateful for the nod. My past has left me with an uneasy soul, and as a result, it touched me on some level that Adam would acknowledge that past by calling me something delicate, like lady.
The whole reason Yoshio Sakamoto wanted to make Metroid Other M in the first place was to explore the relationship between Samus and her former military commander, Adam Malkovich. Samus spends the entire game endlessly droning on about how great a person Adam is, how he is what she looks up to, her father figure and whatnot. But he never lives up to that image she keeps building up. In fact, after the scene where Adam shoots her in the back, and he goes to sacrifice himself to save her from fighting enemies that she has no hope of defeating, but she already defeated a couple of them, and it doesn't make any sense, it just rings hollow. This sacrifice scene, this was the perfect opportunity to show how much these two care about each other. But it's ruined by the fact that he shot her in the fucking back for no reason. And he never explains himself. Why did he shoot her in the back? Why didn't he just shoot the thing that was threatening her? It makes absolutely no sense. And even after he's dead and all, Samus still treats him like he's the best guy ever, in spite of the fact he shot her in the back and humiliated her. At the end of the game, there's this playable epilogue where she goes back on the space station and gets his helmet as a memento, and I just keep thinking to myself, why does she care about this guy? Is she some crazy codependent lady who just loves this guy even though he doesn't love her back? It's just, ugh. Metroid Other M is awful in so many ways, but it's this sick relationship between Samus and Adam that makes me just fucking hate it with a fucking passion that I can't even describe. I hate it. I fucking hate it. I hate it. I fucking hate it. I 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 hate it. When writing Metroid Other M, Yoshio Sakamoto freely admitted that he did not think very hard about Samus's characterization up to that point, and that one of his goals with Metroid Other M was to correct fan assumptions about Samus's character. And if he chose to correct those assumptions that Samus was a brave, intelligent, and fiercely independent person by showing she was actually an emotionally fragile doormat that's desperate for the attention of a guy that treats her like a tool, well, let's just say it doesn't speak well for Sakamoto as a person, if that is truly what he intended for gamers to take away from Metroid Other M. Personally, though, it's more likely that he's just a hack writer who can't grasp the greater implication of his work. Luckily, Sakamoto has stated he does not want to develop traditional games like Metroid anymore, and instead wants to focus on more casual, experimental games. So maybe Metroid will have a comeback. It will be made by people who know what they're doing this time. Maybe people who have already proven that they know what they're doing this time. One can only hope.